In this episode of the No Gray Areas podcast, I sit down with one of our returning guests, former Navy SEAL, speaker, and author, Jason Redman. Jason shares the personal battles he faced after his military career ended, the toll it took on his relationships, and the lesson he's learned about ongoing training in both life and love. Let's get started. Jason Redman, welcome back to the No Gray Areas podcast. It is an honor to have you back. What I want to do is just
in person.
Yeah. Last time we were remote, and this is way better.
I agree.
I love doing in person.
Yeah. Pat, thanks, man. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, well,
and
absolutely.
Big shout out to your team who helps coordinate everything.
They're amazing.
So
they make us look good and sound
that
good.
Which is a lot.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for them. Yeah. Well, you're actually in town. We're in Phoenix here, and you were in town. You were speaking at what was it?
The Arizona Gang Investigators Association Conference. So big shout out to all our law enforcement out there. You guys know I love you. I have a very high speaking rate that I don't charge military, law enforcement, and fire, of course, because I want to give back. And what I speak about is not only leadership, self-leadership being the most critical, I also talk about how we deal with trauma, which law enforcement, fire, I call us the protector community. We encounter a lot of that.
The protector community.
Yeah.
I like that. Because we always hear first responders. But I like protector community.
Yeah,
they are.
We're protectors, man. Law enforcement, fire, and the military. You know, you have this calling. You're a protector, and that's a hard job. It's a hard job. It's hard on families. It's hard on individuals. You see a lot of trauma, and processing that trauma. And we haven't always done it well. We've told guys, hey, suck it up. You know, just suck it up. And sometimes that's not good. It's never. No matter how many times you see it, it's never normal to see people's insides on their outside. I don't care how often you see it. It's just, and it weighs on you, especially when it's a child. Those are the hardest. And so I talk about that. I talk about trauma and how we deal with trauma and how I had to deal with trauma, how I hit a low point where it was my wife who really, I was on a 2010 after my injuries. The world was great, but I was imploding inside.
Really?
And started pushing everybody away, doing everything that we know not to do, but we all do.
Yeah.
You know, because as protectors, we want to protect everybody else. And then when we have a problem, we have a tendency to say, well, I have to fix this on my own. I don't want to let anybody know I'm having issues. And I did the same thing, man. So anyways, I talked about all those things.
Just curious, Jason, let's just jump in there really quick. Did you know what you were doing in 2010? Consciously? Did you realize you were pushing, or did someone have to come in and say, hey, I don't think you're good right now?
My wife was the one who really, and it's funny, I'm letting the cat out of the bag. We kind of opened the relationship book with this, but because this takes time. You know, we had been married almost 10 years at that point, and trust and communication and knowing your spouse, all those things have to come into play. And I tell you what, I mean, our relation went from, level 1.0 through my injuries over those next 3 years, where she was my greatest caretaker. I mean, literally taking care of 4 kids, one giant shot up man child. And we learned a lot.
The one with the worst behavior, right?
Yeah.
I know how that is.
Yeah.
My wife raised 4 kids too.
So that made us stronger. And really, because man, that's a lot of doubt and unknowns and insecurities going through these injuries where we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I mean, for her, man, 40 surgeries that she sat there in the waiting room. For me, it was easy. They, here, we're going to put you down right above death. I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up and the surgery would be done. And often,
and you said 40 surgeries.
Yep. So my wife endured all of those. So, and the average surgery, I would say, was probably 8 hours. Yeah. Some shorter towards the end, but I mean, that's a long time to sit there and wonder about, how is my spouse doing as they're doing complicated surgeries.
Yeah.
So fast forward to 2010. I mean, I was still going through some surgeries, but everything for the most part was good. I was starting to face the fact that my military career was over. We were moving into, we had bought a new house. We were in talks for the Trident, so this was exciting. Everything was good on paper. But I was really struggling on the inside. I think a lot of those demons and the trauma were kind of eating at me, and I just continued to push them away, which I tell guys you can't do. I've talked about Jimmy Hatch's book called Touching the Dragon. Trauma is like a dragon. You can't box it up and chain it up. It will eventually break out and eat you, and it will live in your mind. And until you learn to tame it, you'll never get rid of it. It will never go away. You will never be able to totally get rid of the trauma, major trauma that we've been through. So you'll always have that dragon living in there. But the difference is, do you learn, as Jimmy talks about, do you learn to touch the dragon and live with the dragon versus trying to hide the dragon? And I was trying to do the latter. I was trying to hide the dragon.
And when that's probably normal for most, right?
Oh, 100%.
Most people that go through trauma or a lot of trauma, they're trying to hide it.
That's right.
Push it down,
we stuff it in a box, we chain it up, we stick it in the back of our mind, and we're like, I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to pretend that doesn't exist. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it. I'm just going to put it in the back of my mind and keep running forward through life. But once again, it's a dragon. And, if any of you guys have watched Game of Thrones, dragons burn down cities and they will burn down your mind when the right parameters come into play. And I guess for me, the right parameters that come into play, just stress. And I was known as the overcome guy, the sign on the door. I'm talking all over the place. So I think there was this tremendous strain to be always positive and to never show weakness, and to, I had kind of gotten this name for that. And I think all of it just kind of leveled me.
So for our audience, let's back up a little. So that was 2010 where that starts hitting you, where the trauma and when were you injured? What year was that?
2007. So September 2007.
2007.
Yeah, so,
okay.
Yeah.
So really
almost
quick,
exactly 3 years later.
Let's imagine that we have some listeners that didn't get to hear your last podcast. And if they didn't, I tell them maybe hit pause now and go back and do it.
Yeah, too bad. Do your homework.
Do your homework. Come on, guys. But let's say they didn't. Just give us a quick, brief review of what happens to you in 2007.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be part of a SEAL team, Task Force Fallujah, operating out of Fallujah, Iraq, conducting operations all throughout the Al-Anbar province. Mid-level and high-level direct action or capture-kill missions to go after mid-level and high-level al-Qaeda and insurgent leaders. A very amazing, impact-filled deployment. We conducted over 80 missions, capturing and a lot more capture and at times killing individuals who decided they didn't want to be captured. Mm-hmm. On the very last mission, one of the last missions, we were 1 week from going home. So our other team was coming in to start turnover ops. And we got word that the senior al-Qaeda leader for the Al-Anbar province, a guy we'd been hunting all deployment, was going to be in a specific time and location, launched on that mission. And to make a long story short, we walked into a very well-executed ambush. His security team had set up outside the building he was in. My team walked into that ambush, and several of us were all shot up by machine gun, 2 PKM machine guns and multiple AK-47s. So shot up, I was hit 8 times between my body and body armor. Several teammates were also hit in this gunfight. Super intense, very violent gunfight that lasted about 40 minutes. We ended up, in order to survive and win this gunfight, we ended up calling in a fire mission, which is where we call munitions from an aircraft to the ground from an AC-130 gunship. And it was today, the Iraq War is now over, but it was the closest fire mission ever executed in the Iraq War. Extreme danger close. For the most part, we called rounds directly on our position and miraculously survived.
Yeah.
I owe my life to my teammates. I owe my life to that gunship. So
your teammates for a little while during that gunfight, or right when it breaks out, they think you were killed, right?
Yeah,
because you take a round through the face.
That's right. I was in front of them. I was trying to lay down fire and was shot several times, and then I got up to move back to where they were, and that's where I took the round in the face. Now I'm very lucky. All the rounds that initially hit me head on. or from the front, the machine gun round that caught me in the face actually caught me from behind. The guy said I had stood up and turned to move back to them, and the round hit me right in front of the ear and traveled through my face and exited my nose, right cheek area.
So your team sees that and they think it's a headshot and you're done.
Yeah,
for a few moments, right?
That's right. Well, yes. I mean, no one can remember how long I was out. I sure don't remember.
Yeah.
Because but
and
it
no one's
knocked me
putting
out.
their
So we
stopwatch on in the middle of a firefight.
Yeah, the unconscious stopwatch
Yeah.
as I'm going down.
Yeah.
Let me check this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe 5-10 minutes I was unconscious is what we estimate, until there was a lull fire and I had come to, and I called out to my team leader and asked. I knew I was super
And this is
messed up.
nighttime, so it's dark.
Nighttime. It's about 4
a.m.
in the morning in Iraq,
So you call out, one of them hears, realizes you're alive, and then they go.
Yeah, I called out to my team leader and said, how long till the medevac?
Yeah.
And it was at that point they realized I was still alive.
But the firefight went on for quite a while then after that,
probably.
Right? So they're packing your wounds?
Well, I was still out front at that point, so it was probably my team leader did not run up to get me until after we called in those fire missions, and rightfully so. So I probably laid who knows how long. The gunfight lasted about 40 minutes, I would estimate.
Yeah.
I was shot in the first 5 minutes. So, I mean, if we do the math, probably another 5-10 minutes. Yeah. So we're 10-15 minutes in.
Yeah.
I call out to him. He debates with the gunship for a while about calling in the fire mission. Maybe we were 30 minutes in when he ran forward and got me after the initial fire missions had suppressed the enemy and got me back to the tire, and they got a tourniquet on my arm and stuffed my face.
So, Jason, just because most of our audience, including me, have never been shot, so we don't know what that feels.
I don't recommend it. If any of you guys are out there like, this is a bucket list item.
Take it off the bucket list?
Yeah,
okay.
Take it off the bucket list.
Are you in pain when you're up there? Are you just, is your adrenaline kicking in so much, or when you're laying up there and this firefight's going, like, what's going through your mind? Are you just, you're in pain, you're wondering if you're going to die, you're wondering what to do? What are you thinking?
So when I was hitting the arm, yes, I took 2 rounds, although I didn't know it was 2 rounds at the time. I was shot in the arm right out of the gates. And it, so I would find out later, but initially I was shot in the arm, and it felt like when you get hit in the elbow, although amplify that by like 1,000. It was like an electrical shock that hit me in the arm and traveled up my arm and spiked me right in the back of the head. Massively painful. And when I reached over, I couldn't feel my arm. My arm, I'm assuming, probably caught on my gear, but it killed all the nerves in my lower arm. So I couldn't feel my arm with my right arm. I couldn't feel anything with my left arm. So in my mind, my initial thought was, I just got my arm shot off. I shot and moved, and then I took a knee.
Wait. After you got shot?
They were shooting at me.
And you shot and moved. So you're doing this
you don't
one-handed.
Want to stay in the same position. I mean, we train to you gotta shoot and
get
move.
Off the ice.
So I moved, and then I kneeled, which I probably should have got all the way down. But I was still, everything was so chaotic. I was trying to figure out where is all the gunfire coming from, and I guess. I guess at that point was when the guys saw me get up and turn to move back to them. And when I got shot in the head, when I came to after that, I don't remember any pain, at least up until the point when my team leader, I think, got me. I felt pain then, and when they tried to, when the medevac helicopter came in and he tried to drag me to the helicopter, that was really painful too. So that's when I told him to let me get up and help me up, and I walked to the helicopter.
Do you remember, like, when they first came and grabbed you? Did you see them? Could you see your teammates?
My guys, when they got me the first time, I don't remember that. There are parts of it I don't remember.
Yeah.
They're interesting. Like, it was probably years after the gunfight that we were all hanging out together one night, and my medic, Luke, was like telling this story. And he's like, you remember when this happened? And I was like, I don't remember that. So apparently in the midst of this gunfight, we're back behind a tire. It's about 45, 50 feet to the guys that are engaging us in the vegetation. And the vegetation was, I don't know, 15, 20 feet high. It kind of reminded me like a bamboo grove type, very thick. And one of them, I think it might have been Luke, said, "Hey, I'm going to throw a grenade." And I had grown up in the jungle. I had spent all my time in the early days in the jungle learning jungle warfare, and there was a cardinal rule we were taught: don't throw grenades into vegetation because they will hit a branch and bounce back on you.
Yep.
Yeah. So apparently I was laying behind the tire in a moment of unconsciousness, but somehow heard this. And they said I sat up like I was possessed, face all blown out. And I was like, "Don't throw that grenade. You're going to kill us all." And like laid back down.
Wow.
And so he put his grenade away, and like, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
Like there's no part of my memory. I mean, okay.
So you saved your team's life, really.
But yeah.
You're a humble guy. You don't want to.
I don't know. The upside is he might have taken out the machine gun and finished everything. He would have, maybe with an amazing throw, he would have put it right through the vegetation.
Yeah.
So who knows, man? But yeah, I don't remember everything. I definitely thought I did. There are pieces. There are a lot of things that it was funny when I got to the hospital, the doctors were like, "How long were you unconscious?" And I was like, I had never lost consciousness, which in my mind, I believed.
Yeah.
Like, because you don't realize you're unconscious, your stream of consciousness, if you go unconscious, it immediately picks back up when you wake back up. So there's no gap in your mind. So yeah, I was adamant. Like, I never lost consciousness. I knew exactly what was going on. And then when the guys got back, they were like, "Oh yeah, dude, you were in and out the whole time." And I later met the TF-160th Special Operations Medevac crew, and they told me more about the helicopter flight and interesting things like that helicopter was rigged for 2 wounded individuals, and there were 3 of us plus DJ who got in the helicopter with us. So they flew with the doors open. Which you had 3 guys who had been all shot up. I had 3 gunshot wounds. Matty had 3 gunshot wounds. Luke almost had his leg taken off. So we're bleeding literally all over the place. Well, this helicopter is flying at max speed to get us to Baghdad with the doors open, probably 160 miles an hour. And you helicopter experts out there, don't knock me and say your speeds are wrong. I don't remember, but I'm thinking I'm thinking max speed probably was 160, 170. Like you're pushing the envelope on a helicopter. So the flight guys and the medic were telling me that it created this mist of blood inside the helicopter. And when they landed and they got us off the helicopter and they went back to base, the whole inside of the helicopter was covered with blood. Like it took them, like he said, a month to like get all the blood out of all the dials and knobs. Wow. And they didn't know we survived. They especially didn't think I survived.
Yeah.
So it was kind of crazy. Years later, I tried to track down who was the medevac crew. And that when I did that and got connected to them, that was the first time that they realized that. Because
a lot of times you drop someone off
and they're going and flying another mission. So they're not coming back and checking.
So when you found them, that was the first time they ever found out.
It was really cool to be able to thank them in person. Yeah. And
wow.
So
well, I asked you about what's your team, if you saw your team when they found you, because I'm sure when you're, as much combat as you guys saw, there's times where you're grabbing someone who's wounded, and there's a wound, but there's other times when you look and going, this guy's not going to make it.
Yeah, I think they didn't think I was going to make it. No. I have a plaque, one of my most cherished items that I have in the SEAL teams. When you, when you leave commands, typically it's normal that they provide you a gift. And usually what it is, it could be a plaque, but there's been a tradition that it's a paddle. Sometimes depending on what troop or you're assigned to, it could be something specific to the unit logo, things like that. But most of the time it's a paddle, and then they'll put unit insignia on the paddle and stuff like that. So when I left SEAL Team 10, the guys gave me a paddle, and if they like you, they put a lot of work into the narrative they put on the paddle.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't like you, usually it doesn't say anything, or it'll just say, hey, fair winds and following seas, which is, like nice, politically correct Navy speak for, hey, go screw yourself.
Yeah.
And they had written this really amazing limerick poem. And it was, this is the team that I screwed up in. This is the team that I had messed up. And I know a lot of those guys were not happy for me to be a leader in that troop. And to come full circle and earn back the trust and credibility and the respect that plaque showed was really amazing. And it means, hangs in my office now, but it means so much to me. But anyways, in that write-up, there was something about, hey, in the middle of the gunfight, you got hit in the face, and when we looked at the holy in your face, we put that in the holy shit book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they did not. I don't think they thought I was going to make it.
So then we circle back around. That's 2007. It's 3 years later. You've gone through all these surgeries. You're fairly well known and famous now because you've been right. Have you already met with the president by then? Because he heard about your.
I did meet with the president. I met with the president in the fall. So I wouldn't say I was famous then because I was known probably somewhat in the military community, and the story was getting out a little bit externally. I'd done some news stuff and things like that. I mean, the book had not come out, so I really hadn't popped. I was doing some on social media, not a ton.
Okay.
I wasn't speaking yet because I couldn't, because I was still active duty. I was speaking in the military. I wasn't speaking yet on the career side. So we were making the transition out of the military.
Yeah. But then you start in 2010, then you're not doing well.
No.
And your wife's the one who comes to you. And
Hey, we hope you've enjoyed this episode so far. Be sure to like and subscribe to not miss a future podcast. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I was running a nonprofit. I started a nonprofit in 2009, and this might be 2011. I'm trying to do the math, but it was close to.
The nice thing for you is anytime you forget something, you can say head trauma.
I got shot in the head.
Yeah,
I
mean, who's going to argue with that?
Gosh, man, you prejudice people out there.
Yeah.
I know. That was the running joke for years, with my wife. I'd forget something. I'd be like, what do you expect? I got shot in the head. Yeah, she doesn't
I can't
think that
use
anymore.
That.
Yeah. But yeah, started struggling and started, I was having a lot of issues sleeping. That was an issue. I was very angry, which is common.
Just angry as in just snapping at stupid stuff.
Yeah. And I started to nurse it with alcohol, which is what, and I talked about this at the Arizona Gang Investigators. I think in the protector community, we are a community that alcohol is such a part of our community for good or for bad. I mean, we use it for social, and it helps us to bond and builds amazing camaraderie. Yep. But the downside of that is, for many of us, when things start to go south, it then becomes a numbing agent.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I started doing. I mean, I got to a point where I was probably drinking at least half a bottle of scotch a night. Mm-hmm. And I'd go to the room and just try and stay away from my wife and kids. And she'd say, hey, let's go to the soccer game, which I tried whenever I was home to be involved with my kids and her. And I was kind of suddenly doing all the opposite things. And I think she wanted to give me space. We talk about this in the book, that sometimes, if you sometimes have to give people space. Sometimes they need to sort things out. So I think she tried to give me as much time as possible to sort things out. But I think she saw that I was not sorting things out. Yeah. I was just continuing to get worse. Yeah. And finally we were driving to one of our nonprofit events, or some of the planning for it, at least. We were driving out to that, and I wasn't saying anything, just driving along. And she broke the silence and said, hey, this is how it ends. And I was like, what? What ends? What are you talking about? And she goes, our marriage is going to end if you do not get some help. And it was such a shock, because it was one of our, in the relationship book, I call them rules of engagement. You have to have rules of engagement we had them in the military. You should have them in your relationship. The ways you fight, the way you talk, You can't shoot and throw bombs at your spouse. Yet I watch people that do it all the time. And one of our non-negotiables is we never brought up divorce, ever. It was a non-negotiable. So the mere fact that she kind of threw out, she didn't say divorce. She just said, this is how this is going to end if you don't.
Yeah, it caught your attention.
Oh, like she punched me in the head.
Yeah.
So yeah, that opened a dialogue, and she was like, you need to go get some help. Like you're not figuring this out on your own. And it was good. And thankfully I was still active duty. The command I was at, we had psychologists and counselors and all that. And so I told her, I said, okay, I'm going to go talk to somebody. I did that next week, and it helped, and it led me down a path to start. I needed to address some of the things in my life. I needed to cut out the alcohol some. I think I stopped drinking for a while during some of that period. And yeah, and that's what I tell people. The interesting thing, I talk about this in my talks. None of us in the protector community ever in training, at least everything that I've seen. There may be some people that try and say, I don't know if I agree with that. But for the most part, we always have a partner. No one's going into a fire by themselves. They have someone with them. In the SEAL teams, all through training, I had a swim buddy. When I went through Ranger School, I had a Ranger buddy. Anytime we're doing things in combat, at a minimum, it is a 2-man room entry. We do not do 1-man room entries. Yet why is it when we're all struggling, we want to do it on our own? And I was the same, man. Here I am.
So why do you think that is, though? Because you bring up a great point. I think we all know it's not healthy to do that, and everything else in your training tells you not to, and yet we
protectors were strong. We want to protect. We want to help
feel like
the weak. 100%.
Yeah.
It is hard to say
for sure.
I am in a moment of weakness and I am struggling with something that, I think there's been some messaging like, hey, you're a weak stick if, these things bother you. And that's unfortunate because, hey, man, they may bother you. That's reality. I mean, seeing people's insides on their outside, seeing kids shot, seeing women shot, even seeing dudes shot and killed or blown up or, I have friends that are in the fire service, and some of the horrific wrecks they've showed up on where babies are ejected from cars. My buddy was riding down the road, and a lady without a helmet fell off the back of a bike at 60 plus miles an hour and smacked her head in the ground and was run over, splattered all across that highway.
And you live with that the rest of your life then.
Yeah. And those are mental scars, man. That's trauma. And that's not weakness. That's just humanity.
I was just going to say that. It's humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, if you can see all of that and it doesn't even affect you, you're probably
that's
lacking some. Yeah, that's the problem.
Yep.
That's the problem.
And I told those guys that too. You can't lose your humanity. That's an okay thing if it still bothers you. It should. But how do we get back to that? Well, you got to lean back into there are good people in this world, and I think family and a spouse are some of the most powerful things that can do that. I think God intended us for that, to have a spouse and to raise kids, and I think that's the greatest purpose we can have. I mean, don't get me wrong, being a protector was amazing, but that I think makes a difference. And she called me out on that, and I needed it. And we talk about in the book, I would not have listened if that had happened on, 3 months into our relationship. The trust and
absolutely
that path, it'd be no different than if you're part of a new unit, fire, military, police, and some brand new person comes in and starts calling you out on stuff. You're not going to listen to that person. You don't know who they are. They've not proved themselves. You don't know anything about them. So it takes time to build that. That's where you got to put the reps in.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What reps did you put in as a couple? Because there's some couples that have been married for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and they weren't putting in the reps or doing the right things, and so they're not in that place. But you guys were doing something that helped you be in the place that when she called you out on that, even though you didn't want to hear it, she was a truth teller in your life that you trusted.
Yeah. We break the book into 3 parts. Mission, training, under fire. For anybody who is listening to this, the most critical thing you can have in your relationship is a shared mission. Your values and your mission should be aligned. And too many people go into a relationship and there are things that are not aligned. Your mission is not aligned. And we'll say, well, you know what? This person's so sexy, and maybe the physical intimacy is amazing. So we'll say, maybe that's not that big a deal because we like all this stuff, but you're looking at the short term and not the long term. And what happens is people will go ahead and get married when there's a fracture, missions are not aligned, that values are not aligned, and you don't have this shared mission, that those things start to fester up. And what happens is a lot of people are really good at ignoring them for years and hoping that they'll change and that they'll get on course. A perfect example we've seen. And what are these things? Money is a big one. It could be how we spend our time can be a big one.
These are things that you would say are shared mission or shared values, right?
That's right. Yeah. Political views are a big one. Kids and how we're going to raise kids are a big one. Where we want to go in life and what our end state. Are you savers or spenders, and how does that process happen? These are all things that need to be identified early because they become major problems.
And a lot of times we marry someone who is, maybe they have the same values, but we're a little opposite on it. Like, so spender or saver, one of those. A lot of couples are opposites, right? Like one couple's like, hey, we got some extra money. Let's go spend it and make some new memories. And the other one's like, let's save it for a rainy day. But if you have a shared value, you can kind of work through those.
That's
things,
right. You can compromise on where you're going to meet in the middle. You can decide
stronger.
what are we going to do and how do we do it, and that becomes training.
Yeah.
So that is the training phase.
Yeah.
And the training phase never ends because the Jason Redman my wife met is very different from the Jason Redman 10 years after we met, and very different from the Jason Redman today.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad. I got to pause for a second here and just tell you, I'm so glad you brought that up, because here's a big pet peeve of mine. Whether you agree with getting married young is good or bad, I don't care so much. But the argument I always hear, I'm bringing this up because I got married young. I got married at 19. We've been happily married for 33 years. Had to work through a lot of stuff like all couples. But a lot of times people will say like, well, don't get married young because, you're going to change. And I always want to jump back and go, you're going to change. I don't care if you get married at 30. At 40, you're going to be different than you were at 30.
That's right.
So as a couples, you're going to be working through, both of you changing and morphing, and that's just part of being married for very long, right? So, okay, go on.
No,
you got me on
that
was my soapbox.
No, it's good because it's accurate, it's true, and that's why the training never ends. I mean, you think about this book was written, it'll apply to anybody, but it was written really for the protector community who has the highest divorce rate. Divorce rates across the country are spiking. We're at, I think the last thing I read, we're almost at a 50% divorce rate here in America. In the protector community, it's significantly higher. It's 60 to 70% in law enforcement and fire. Military, I don't know what conventional military is. I would say it's pretty high. In special operations, it's 90%.
Yeah.
I mean, we're off the charts. So if you think about being part of police, fire, or military, what are we doing all the time? Every day, day in, day out, you're training. Mm-hmm. You're training for the current situations you may encounter. You're training for new situations you may encounter. You're putting in new technologies. You're putting in, hey, there's a new gang, there's a new problem, there's a new enemy. That's right. It never ends. Yet many couples don't stop training.
Yeah.
And if you can look at it this way, how do you communicate? How do you constantly talk about, your dreams and goals and where you're going? And those are going to change. So now we got to adjust the plan and we got to adjust how we talk. Where are we both at these different points in our lives? So the training really never ends. But that's what makes the difference. And there's a level of commitment that has to happen with that. You have to put in the time and spend time with that individual. That's why it's there are members of the protector community who, for whatever reason, don't want to share that side of their lives with their spouse. And on one side, I know some guys are like, well, I want to protect her.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's one of the
which
big
I would
reasons,
say that's not a good reason. And the other side is, I don't know, maybe a selfish side where, hey, this is my world, so I'm going to keep a separation here. But either way, that creates issues. And that's where that rift starts to happen. So there isn't training. You're not figuring out how to change over time. Goals are changing, kids are coming along, money situations are changing. Maybe you're moving, whatever it is. And now if you're not doing that and, the protector is putting more and more time into his work and less time into his most important teammate, it reaches that collision point that we've all seen out there, that point where, hey, it's either me or the job.
Yeah.
And the statistics show in the protector community, 70% of the time or greater, guy or gal chooses the job.
Yeah.
So, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be, if you're doing it right, if you're communicating right, if you're training through all this like we did, you will navigate the challenges, especially when you get to part 3, under fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're in the bullets and bombs of life are going off. So what makes the difference in fire, police, military when we're under fire? Mission and training.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say under fire, what are some of those things that might happen in a couple's life that would be under fire?
Oh, you name it, man. Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, kids can be, just having kids can set that off. Financial problems.
Losing a job.
Oh, 100%.
Kids
losing a job. Even disagreements on maybe values were misaligned in the beginning, and now we're further along, and we're starting to butt heads on those misaligned values. And that leads to the fighting. And the problem is, have you established your rules of engagement? How do you fight? Man, I've watched some friends who are brutal. Like, I'm like, oh my God, like horrendously cursing. I mean, verbally berating each other, bringing up every bad thing that's ever happened in their relationship in the fight. I call that blue on blue. You're shooting your spouse, like intentionally. Like, I want to hurt you in this argument. And that makes no sense to me. I mean, we don't shoot each other in training. Why are you doing it to your spouse?
I'm quiet. You're probably looking at my face going like, is he with me right now? But I'm thinking so much about what you're saying. Jason, it's brilliant what you just said. That is like all the training that you put in, and then you go out and so much of your training is to make sure that you don't get hit with friendly fire, making sure that, the muzzles are pointing in the right direction so you're not accidentally shooting. But then we end up with our spouses, the ones we claim to love the most. We really turn the gun on them sometimes. I'm not literally, I guess, but I'm just, in the way where we start saying things or fighting in a way where you're like, you wouldn't do this with someone who's truly a team member.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it is amazing how we do it and that's just poor training. That's all that is. You didn't lay out what are our rules of engagement? Yeah. How do we agree this is how we're going to fight?
The beautiful thing about that, I'm going to read a quote that you have in the Trident here. The beautiful thing about that is it doesn't matter how long. Some could be married for 15 years, and maybe they've been training poorly for 15 years.
Yes.
But they can make a choice to change their training. Now, it's going to take a little while. So you have to build new habits. But all of a sudden, 2 or 3 years from now, they could be fighting totally different.
That's
and
right.
when I say fighting, every couple fights.
All of us.
But are you fighting?
Eric and I.
Are you fighting fairly?
We got into it Friday night.
Yeah, yeah. It's just part of relationships.
Yep.
But
100%.
to do it in a healthy way.
That's
like
right.
how you said. So here's the quote I want to read. This is actually it's not related to, because it's in your book, The Trident here, but it's talking about how you can change. You actually say, I want people to remember that no matter how dark things get, you have the power to change your story. We're talking about relationships right now, but that could be anything. It's not about the setbacks. It's about how you respond to them. That's the legacy I want to leave behind.
Yeah.
I love, and it fits so well with our podcast because we talk about the power and complexity of human choice. We make our choices, and eventually our choices make us. That's why that phrase stood out to me. You have the power to change your story.
It's never too late. That's something I try and tell people. Those are lies that we'll buy into as humans.
Yep.
We'll convince ourselves it's too late. I've messed up too much. I'm broken too much. Whatever it is, our marriage is too far gone to save. And if you're, and maybe it is. I don't want to sugarcoat and give people false hope, but I also say, have you truly put in the work to try and change?
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And that's where you can take people and if they're willing to put in the work, man, and you train differently, not doing the same thing you've been doing, forever, because obviously you haven't got the results you are hoping to get, then yeah, man, there's opportunity there.
Yeah. And I don't want our audience to miss what you just said. That's a great point. You gotta change up your training then. If you're in a crappy marriage right now or a crappy relationship, then quit doing whatever you've been doing.
Which comes us full circle back to Jason Redman sitting on the X, drinking himself silly and pushing everybody away. What I was trying to do by myself was not working. Mm-hmm. And when Erica called me out and said, you need to go get some help, I needed a different training method. Yeah. Because what I was doing did not work.
Was it painful? A painful training method that you have, or was it freeing? You were going this direction and it wasn't working. And Erica came and said, hey, you got to get off the X. You got to do something. Was it freeing or was it painful in the beginning?
I think it was painful in the beginning. I mean, it's hard to talk about our failures, problems, trauma, things we don't want to talk about. I mean, that's why we box them up and put them in our mind, because we don't want to talk about them. And oftentimes, peeling back trauma, the problem with trauma is usually it's not just trauma we've seen that we're not connected to in any way. The problem is we have a tendency as humans to connect ourselves to it somehow. Even in a car accident where a baby's ejected from the car, where a fire, an EMT or police that shows up on that scene had nothing to do with that, will somehow walk away and be guilty, like, I saw that car pass me and they were speeding and I could have pulled them over, but I didn't because I saw this other thing. So yeah, something that happened 10 minutes prior that may or not had any outcome on this, suddenly that guy's carrying that guilt, and that baby that was killed in this accident is my fault. It's amazing how we do that. Yeah, when we start having to talk about those things, we have to start admitting those things, and that's hard. We as humans, we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was hard to navigate through some of that. Some of it also was not just speaking about things. I also started exploring other modalities. I did something called stellate ganglion block, which is a shot that they use that they kind of describe it as like a little bit of a reboot of the brain. They use it for trauma. That helped me tremendously. I think talking about it between our psych and also some of the counselors.
Is that like a one-time thing, or did you?
For me, it was a one-time thing. Some guys have done it more. Okay. I know that Dakota Meyer is a big fan of stellate ganglion block.
Does it kind of restart the brain a little bit, or help create new pathways, or
it's kind of weird. I can't explain physiologically. They do this shot into your stellate ganglion nerve, which is the main nerve in your neck that goes up into your brain. It branches off into 3, and they do this shot. And it's kind of weird when they do it, because you get this warm numbing and actually your face kind of goes numb. So it almost looks like you've had a stroke. Yeah. But that only lasts for maybe half a day. But they came up with this, some doctor figured this out in the 60s with some women who had suffered severe sexual trauma. And I could be wrong. If anybody's out there, correct me. But if that's kind of what I remember. And then it got brought back by a SEAL, a doctor who was a SEAL, or a SEAL who became a doctor, and I think an Army doc, because they had read this and they said, could this work in our veteran community coming back with all this trauma? So they got real big into it. And I know there's a lot of guys. But what I always tell every guy is what worked for me may not work for you. And this is frustrating to me. I can't tell you how many guys I meet or gals who are dealing with trauma that they'll try one thing and it doesn't work. And then they'll be like, it didn't work. Yeah. So then they go back to self-medicating and sit right back on that X. And I'm like, listen. And once again, all my stuff is special operations analogies, because that's the world I grew up in. But listen, fire, police, and military, you're going to understand this analogy. If you have to breach a door, you don't give it one try and you don't get in the door and turn around to the team and be like, hey, failed breach. Sorry, we're done. Let's go home, guys. Hey, sorry, people stuck inside. We're out. Failed breach, man.
Yeah.
You come up with plan A and plan B and plan C and plan D. Like, you will get in there. For us, I
Great
mean, we have
analogy.
extensive breaching scenarios that we do where, some of our advanced breachers, it may be a 2 or 3 hour breaching problem they're dealing with. And they have to get super creative on everything they can do to get in that building, especially if it's like some sort of hardened structure. Well, why should that be any different? None of us go on a mission and suddenly one thing goes wrong. And we're like, that didn't work. Like, yeah, you got to figure out what are the tools we can use. And there's a lot of different modalities out there that I know, guys. I mean, I've tried a lot of them. There's one called magnetic resonance therapy where they pulse kind of waves through your brain, and then doctors have looked at our brain operate off different wavelengths when we're alpha, beta, theta, gamma. And what doctors have come to find is individuals that have been through a lot of trauma and are struggling, their brain waves are not synced. Like they should be in sync, and they're totally out of sync, which cause sleep problems, all kinds of different things. So they've figured out with this magnetic resonance therapy that by doing this, and it's like 30 days that every day you're going in and you're getting like 30 minutes of brain zapping. And for some people, it realigns their brainwave activity. I know guys that it was life-changing, like literally left there and we're like, oh my God, like I am thinking clear again. I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
I did it for 30 days and
Nothing.
I didn't feel like it did anything for me.
Yeah.
So,
but you bring up a great point then. You just keep trying. Try something else. Try something else.
You owe it to yourself. Man.
Yeah.
You owe it to yourself.
So another quote that's in the book that I loved, you said, this was in the context of in our last interview together, I asked you, that had to be the worst day of your life when you got shot in the head. And you're like, no, actually it wasn't the worst day. And then you talked about it was your failure as a leader was your worst day. And this was in the context of that. You said, I realized in that moment that I had been my own worst enemy. I had been so focused on being the toughest SEAL and impressing everyone that I lost sight of what it truly meant to be a leader. Just a great line there. I had been my own worst enemy. First of all, just for you to come to the point where you admitted that, right? Because I think that's true of a lot of us at some time in our life. Probably every human at some point in their life, they were actually their own worst enemy. But you came to the point where you actually recognized that and admitted it. And then it was a painful journey to get out of that, right?
Yeah.
How long?
I would say that was at least a 6-month journey for me. And it probably took a year and a half to show the guys to fulfill the Vince Peterson quote, people will follow you if you give them a reason to. Like, nobody was jumping on board just because Jason Redman said, I'm going to make a change. And I think that's where people sometimes struggle. They're like, hey, I've changed. But if there isn't sustained performance over time where you show you are different and successful and like people have a reason to follow you, that's going to take time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the other thing with that is we often are our own worst enemies because we don't, it's easy to look at the good things we're doing in our life and overinflate how great we are and ignore the negative things.
Yep.
And
psychologists have proven that that's true.
Oh, yeah.
That most of us inflate the good things about ourselves and ignore the negative things. Yeah, that's true of almost all humans.
And there's a disconnect. Oftentimes, and the problem is I think there's a disconnect where I think with bad leaders or maybe how you view yourself is drastically different from how other people view you.
Yeah. And if you're in a leadership position,
my problem.
Well, and here's the tough thing, right, Jason, is if you're in a leadership position, you're not hearing from very many people either. Like if you're a leader, you have power now, and those that are underneath you there's going to be very few, if any, that will be honest with you.
Yeah.
So you're hearing one side of things, and then it's only compounding your inflated view of yourself, right? I often say the higher you go in leadership, the less you hear.
Yep.
So you were hearing less, but then it came to
I was hearing some because I wasn't high enough in leadership yet. I just was ignoring it. And the problem was one of the main people who was bringing it to me was a guy, my platoon senior chief, which that's really the role in a platoon. The senior enlisted member, one of their jobs is to groom and help grow the junior officer. And there were several problems there. He was a very forward-leaning, kind of over the top, my way or the highway type guy. Very good SEAL, but had a tendency to really rub people the wrong way with the way he led and did things. And he and I did not get along. I overinflated my prior enlisted experience and was like, hey, I don't need to listen to you. I already know how to do these things. I've been in almost as long as you have. So he would come to me and try and tell me things, but unfortunately he was neither diplomatic or tactful in the way he would do it. So instead of listening, I'd just be like, screw you. You and I don't get along. The way you're delivering this, I'm not even going to listen to. And it's funny, after I got in trouble, I looked back, and I said, damn, like that guy told me things that I should have listened to.
Yeah. Well, one more quote I want to read here and just have you speak into it a little bit, because I love the word that you used in it. You said, the day I took full responsibility for my actions was the day my life changed. Accountability isn't a burden. That's the part that stuck out to me. Because I think most of us as human beings, from the time we were little kids, right? When we were little kids, almost all of us were like, I can't wait till I'm an adult and no one can tell me what to eat, or no one can tell me what time to go to bed, right?
Stay young forever. Adulting sucks.
Exactly. My daughter literally I have 3 adult children now and 7 grandkids now. And our oldest, my daughter, just yesterday wrote, this adulting thing sucks. Because everything was breaking and they have to pay all this money out for their house and their car now. But you said accountability isn't a burden. I love that line, because again, I think as human beings, even as adults, most of the time we think of accountability as not being a good thing.
Yeah.
Speak into that a little bit.
Oh, good God. I mean, that opens a whole band. I mean, you look at the world we're living in today where there is almost no accountability. I mean, we've reduced accountability in our cities, enforcing laws. We're telling people who are burning down cities or looting, like, hey, it's okay because they're just expressing their opinion. No, you're not. You're breaking the law.
Yep.
And we're telling kids, like, hey, you don't have to get good grades because it's unfair to place standards on you, because if little Johnny doesn't do as well as little Jimmy, then that's just not fair. So we're not going to enforce grades.
Participation ribbons.
Yeah, participation. Hey, little Jill is an amazing soccer player and Susie is not that great, but we want to give you both the same award. So we're not, I mean, look at accountability in the protector community. It's something I brought up yesterday, and thankfully it was received well. I talked about the lack of enforcement and standards and physical ability in the protector community. That's really, I'm seeing more and more. Less so in the military, thank God, but I am seeing it. And I see it a lot in fire and law enforcement. I see it in the leadership. And I asked him that yesterday. I said, hey guys, you in a leadership position, if you still are an active duty fire or law enforcement officer and something was to go wrong, it is your duty. You are required by law to step in and help. And for those of you who don't have the physical ability, it could potentially cost you your life. Even worse, it could cost the life of the people who you're supposed to protect and serve. And the biggest thing that I would say is I would have issues with someone who's depending on you, some young kid reporting to something that now you're their backup and you're so out of standards that it ends up costing them their lives. That's dangerous. And that's this failure of lack of accountability that's happening. People don't want to, it goes even further. Like, we're now saying that obesity is discrimination. To say someone's obese is discrimination. That's madness. The obesity is science. It's not discrimination. You are above the normal weight you should be, and it is unhealthy. It is absolutely unhealthy. If you choose to live your life that way, that's fine. And I know that a lot of people out there struggle with their weight. But once again, it comes back to training. If you tried one thing and it didn't work, then you can't just give up. What works for one person to lose weight isn't going to work for another. So yeah, it's this maddening world we're living in where we're telling people you don't have to take accountability for your actions. We just want to accept you as you are.
The very next line in that quote, by the way, I didn't even finish it, is you actually say that accountability is a foundation for growth, which I think is so interesting, and I would agree with.
I think we have a lot of growing to do as a nation. And what's fascinating to me is people are amazed at individuals that take accountability for their actions and admit, man, I really screwed that up. And like, people are afraid to do that. And I love when people read the Trident and they say, oh my God, that was not what I expected. Because it is not your standard military book.
It's very true.
Yeah.
You're right. I was. And you actually even warned me. I didn't read it before our first interview. And then I read it and you're like, yeah, that's not the typical military book.
And I have friends and, the military, there's a running joke now. Every SEAL out there has written a book, and there's a formula for a SEAL book, write about Buds and how tough Buds was, and then write about how awesome you were in combat. Like, that's the formula for the SEAL book. So people are like, oh, I guess that's your book too. And I was like, no, it's not so much my book. My book's about up.
Yeah, you spend quite a bit of time talking about, exactly. Yep.
And it's amazing to me, though, how many people are shocked by that and uncomfortable by that. And I will admit, when I put the book out there, I was a little nervous, like, wow, I'm really laying myself out here. But the other thing was, I was like, but I did these things. Mm-hmm. These were the mistakes I made. And I knew, having served, 15 years operationally, that every other amazing elite warrior that I work with, maybe not all of them had made mistakes to my level, but they had made mistakes. That's part of being human. And I knew that people could look at that. Some who are willing to humble themselves and take accountability for themselves could also grow from somebody else saying, hey, I screwed these things up and I grew up and figured it out.
It was such an important message, and I think it's probably one of the most important things that we do as parents, train our kids. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone will. When you do, admit it, deal with it, and move on.
Yep.
That's how you do. The worst thing you can do is make excuses.
Yep. Or try and cover it up and hide it.
Yeah. I always told my kids when they were growing up, I said, listen, biggest thing with us is I want you to be honest. When you make a mistake, just be honest.
Yep.
And of course, no kid is going to be 100%, but yeah, so I think it's a huge life lesson. And I would highly, and this is a great transition for us, I would highly recommend the audience to grab this book, The Trident. You have a couple of other ones, but how would they do that? Where do they go to find this?
You can get it at almost all major bookstores. You can get it on Amazon. Although if you buy it on Amazon, Jeff Bezos does not sign it. So I just want to let everybody know that.
Yeah.
But if you buy it on jasonredman.com, I personally sign every book that we
That's where
out.
I want to take the audience. Yep. Go to jasonredman.com because you got other cool stuff there too. You got shirts and just a bunch of cool stuff there. And you got a couple of books out now. Trident, here's the one that I quoted from a few times. Can't wait to read the book that's coming out, and you said February?
Yeah, February.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
A book on couples coming out around Valentine's Day.
Yeah, there was somebody who was smarter than me.
That's some strategy there. Good. Well, Jason, this podcast that we're interviewing right now, we're sitting in a studio doing this, but this is going to drop on 9/11. Does that date mean anything to you, 9/11? I mean, I think it should for all Americans, but...
Yeah. No, 9/11 is a very... it was a very important date, I think, for those of us in the military during that time frame. And I guess we were doing the math. I have a good friend of mine who survived the towers falling. He's one of the few firefighters who was in the impact zone where I think scientists said it was a 99% kill ratio, and he survived. And Tim and I were talking. He goes and speaks on 9/11 all the time. And if you are, the military is comprised of younger individuals. The average age probably in the military is 18 to 22. Mm-hmm. And, many of them get out, they do one tour and that's it. Those individuals today know nothing about 9/11.
Yep.
the single greatest attack that occurred on American soil, barring Pearl Harbor, which 9/11, obviously, one was a military target, this was a civilian target. And so any of us who were there, I was in the military when 9/11 happened. I mean, no one who is, older, of our age range does not remember that day.
Absolutely.
And it fundamentally changed the military. The military, the United States military had not been in any kind of protracted war since Vietnam. There were skirmishes. We did Grenada, Panama, Grenada, Bosnia, obviously.
Desert Storm 1.
Desert Storm 1.
Yeah.
But no prolonged combat, and it really wasn't on the radar. It's interesting. I'm reading a book right now about Afghanistan and the war against the Soviets that led into the buildup of Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda and led to that terrorism. But yeah, I'll never forget that moment. I had just started school. I'd just been picked up for the commissioning program. Eric and I had just gotten married. And one of my best friends, Bobby Ramirez, was a fellow SEAL teammate of mine that also had gotten picked up. We competed against each other in the Seaman to Admiral program. And only 50 people in the Navy get picked for this program. And the fact that we were both trying to get picked up from the same command and we were friends created a lot of talking. Like, hey, man, when I get picked up as an officer, I'll let you be, one of the enlisted guys in my platoon. So there would be a lot of banter like that. So amazingly, both of us got picked up together, which was pretty cool. We got to go to school together. Our kids were about the same age. So he and I hung out all the time. Erica and I and Ann and their kids would hang out. But I remember that morning, I left class. I had my first class of the day at like 8 a.m. And I left class and I went to the student center to get a coffee to meet Bobby. And I got my coffee and the kid behind the counter was like nervously laughing as he handed it to me. And I was like, "You all right, man?" And he's like, "The world's coming to an end." And I was like, "What's happening?" And he said, "A plane hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon's on fire." I was like, "Okay, that's weird." So I went over to the TV and started watching, and Bobby showed up a few minutes later, and he and I were watching with all these other students, and then the second plane hit. And yeah, we both looked at each other and we're like, this is intentional. Like, we're going to war.
Yeah.
So I went home, obviously spent a lot of time with Erica, and then a couple days later, I went to back to my old SEAL team, and Vince Peterson, who I talked about, who gave me that greatest advice, was the CO there. And I said, "Hey, I want out of this program." I said, I don't want to be in this commissioning program. I know you guys are going to war. Like, I want to go. And he, one of the more prophetic things I've seen in many, many years, he looked at me and said, "Red, this war will go on for decades." He said that probably September 13, 2001. And he said, "You need to go back to school, finish." He said, "You will get your opportunity."
Wow.
So I did. Bobby and I went back, finished school, watched a lot of our teammates go off to war. We started losing people. I hadn't lost anybody I personally knew yet. Commissioned in May of 2004. Obviously, at this point, both Iraq and Afghanistan had kicked off, and the SEAL teams were all going to war. It was one of the goals of the SEAL teams to get our guys to war, and got assigned to go to Afghanistan at that point. So I still hadn't lost anyone I personally knew yet until Red Wings happened. So Operation Red Wings is the Marcus Latrell lone survivor story. So that is my troop. I talk about that in the book.
The helicopter?
Yeah, our helicopter was shot down on June 28, 2005. And that was my troop. Eric Christensen was my boss. Mike McGreevy was a friend from SEAL Team 4, and I actually originally was in the platoon that was on the helicopter that got shot down, and they ended up moving me after a couple of months into our sister platoon, Foxtrot platoon. They kind of re-jock things. Kind of interesting. I often wonder,
You could have been on the helicopter.
I could have been on that helicopter. I mean, so yeah, you never know why things happen.
Yeah.
But that was the first, like, hey, this is for real.
Yeah.
Headed to Afghanistan and saw some of my first combat. Coming full circle to 9/11, the power of that day, for the SEAL teams at least, I can't speak for other units, but for us, we wanted to be operating that day. We did everything in our power to be conducting missions. And I was fortunate enough to do 2 deployments with 9/11 in that cycle. And it was our goal to go crack skulls on that day. Like, we tried to find targets where, hey, we know you're bad and we want to pay you in kind for what you did. And there was a lot of power in that. Just because the amount of deaths and the guys that we've lost, I think anything after 9/11 and the global war on terror goes back to that day and the attack that happened. I was wounded. Interestingly enough, the night I was wounded, we were supposed to conduct a mission on September 11th, and it got bumped. So I got, technically, the night I was wounded could have been a 9/11 mission. It just, the weather, I don't remember what caused that.
Yeah.
Something stopped that mission from happening, and then another mission popped that we did on September 12th and 13th. Yeah, it's tough, and especially when you fast forward to the collapse and fall of Afghanistan. If you look at the 9/11 attack, us going into Afghanistan, and the Afghanistan was under Taliban rule, which was a theocratic state, pretty much. And the Taliban definitely ruled with an iron hand, very brutal, under Sharia law. So, and I guess back in the 60s, from what I understand, Afghanistan was a little more free and definitely kind of expanding their wings on freedom and women's rights and all these things. And then coming into moving in 60s and 70s, I think. And then when the Soviets came in, they wanted to turn it into a communist state. Mm-hmm. And that's what led to the Soviet War, which ultimately that led to the Taliban after that. Which then led to 9/11. So we came in and we built all these relationships with the Afghans, and they saw a level, despite living in a war zone for 2 decades, they saw a level of freedom that they haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Like, most of them had never experienced.
That's right. Well, and one of the bigger things was women going to school, women in leadership positions.
Yeah.
I mean, that was something that never happened under the Taliban. Gay rights, whether you agree or disagree, I mean, in a free society, in my opinion, if it's not negatively impacting other people, that's a whole nother subject here. But if it's not, then, and that was something that never once again would have happened other than the Taliban. So when we decided to pull out of Afghanistan the manner we did, I think that really hurt a lot of us, thinking back all the way back to the beginning of this, from 9/11 all the way through almost 2 decades. Yeah. Those of us who lost friends there, those of us who had made friends with Afghan members. And I didn't get to know I didn't interact quite as much, but I have friends who became tremendous friends with some of the interpreters and the families, and these people that risked their lives for this future. For this future Afghanistan that they were promised would be free. And obviously we just, so I don't understand that, how we turned the country back over to the exact same people who we went to war with 20 years earlier, who helped facilitate the 9/11 attacks.
And gave them all of our stuff.
Yeah.
It probably was really painful a few weeks ago for you to watch them doing that parade in Afghanistan with our equipment.
Yeah,
I imagine.
As we're wrapping up this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment on something you'll take away. All right, let's hop back into the remainder of the episode.
Well, Jason, man, what a gift. Thank you again. And I just want to honor you and say thank you for your service and the many like you that have served our country. First responders, our protectors, as you call them.
That's right.
And we are so thankful. All of us in No Gray Areas are so incredibly thankful for all of our protectors. So we appreciate it. One of my favorite parts of the podcast, Two Truths and a Lie. Last time I interviewed you, you got me. I was on a run. So let's see if you can do it again.
All right. I had to think about this because I was
did.
like, man, what have I not put out there, when your life is an open book?
Yeah.
I once watched 12 Strong, the movie, in the White House, sitting in between Donald Trump, Dick Cheney, and Barack Obama.
Oh, my goodness.
I once did the worm on the commander's table at a Navy formal dinner. And when I first learned to skydive, I did not use the life-saving device, also known as an automatic activation device, because I couldn't afford one.
Those are good. Okay, I'm going to go with the 12 Strong. When did that come out? I'm going to say that was true. That one was true. Am I right on that?
Are we answering now, or do we wait till you go through all three?
No. I'm going to. So at least let me narrow it down to 50-50 if I get it. So I'm going to say that one's true.
No, that one's false. Right out of the gate.
You're going to make me suffer.
So,
really?
But here's what's true.
Okay.
There's a part of that that's not true.
You did think a while on these, and those were good.
Yeah.
You earned that win.
So I did watch 12 Strong with Trump and Cheney. Obama was not there.
Okay, so I'm going to give myself half a point for that. so you did. Which one's the lie?
I'm curious,
which one's the lie?
Which one? That was the lie.
That was
the lie.
So you did do the worm.
I did do the worm. I can actually do the worm really good. I'm a dancer, man.
Yeah.
I'm a dancer. My family, when we do events together, we dance.
It's dancing.
And we love it.
Okay.
And it's just fun. And I can do an amazing worm. So one night at a Navy ball when I was in ROTC, we all were having fun. And the commander's table had left. I don't know what possessed me. I think at some point, we're all dancing and having fun. And I jumped up on the table and did the worm across the commander's table, much to the joys of the...
Did they find out, the commander?
No, they were gone at this point. Yeah,
okay.
So...
And then what about the safety device?
That is true. I was an idiot. When I first started learning to skydive in Panama, I bought a parachute and it didn't have an automatic activation device. So what it is, it's a device that if you're knocked out, if you have a malfunction, if there's some sort of issue, it calculates how fast you're falling and it will automatically deploy your reserve. It'll cut away your main and deploy your reserve. So you could have a bad main, you could be unconscious. I didn't jump with one for the first, I don't know, it wasn't until I bought my own parachute again years later. So pretty stupid.
Yeah.
I was young and dumb and still invincible, but I couldn't. It was more expensive. It was like an additional $1,000 that I didn't have, and I was like, I'll be fine.
And at that point in your life, you weren't worth $1,000. You assumed, I guess.
Yeah, I wasn't making much money.
That's how we think when we're young.
Yeah.
Jason, thanks so much for being on No Gray Areas. Again, you're a repeat guest. We have very few repeat guests, so that's an honor. But we are honored with you and your service and all of the protectors. So thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the No Gray Areas podcast on our YouTube channel. We'll catch you next time.